All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by good friends here at Mile High Sports and FanDuel. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn, at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to talk about the Denver Nuggets. Recording this a little bit early, so apologies if something happens in between now and Thursday. Recording this on kind of Tuesday, late afternoon, early evening. Going to record a Wednesday episode for this coming Saturday. So trying to get ahead and make sure that you guys are getting all the content that you deserve. But if I do miss something, sorry, I will be in Yellowstone and or Montana during this long weekend. On today's episode, yesterday I did a live kind of assembling of a 10-man rotation, one that I didn't really like, one that when you're trying to do it live, it's not necessarily easy to both talk and kind of describe my thoughts and general feelings about the rotations and what Denver is actually trying to accomplish. So what I did for the first segment, I'm going to put together 5 options on the screen. Already have put them together, kind of talking through some of my logic behind these choices and trying to discuss and really break down, hey, there are going to be some issues. There are going to be some things that the Nuggets are going to have to handle. How are they going to handle it? What is it going to look like? Things like that. And then in the second segment, going to really hone in against the Thunder because Denver, they may or may not face the Thunder in the upcoming year in the playoffs, but all of the books, everybody still believes that the Thunder are a massive threat in the Western Conference, still the best team in the NBA. And if the Nuggets are going to challenge that, they're going to have to bring their best. They're going to have to bring an impressive rotation and a rounded skill set to that mix that they didn't bring this last time. So I'm going to bring my thoughts to that and kind of talk about what Denver's best options are based off of what they have assembled. And it may not include a very prominent figure within the Nuggets. So we'll see what happens. But for now, let's get into it. Option 1 for the Nuggets rotation, we're going to go through 5 different options, putting them on screen right now. Option 1 is going to be my season opener option. This is my prediction for what the Nuggets season opening lineup is going to look like. 240 minutes. Jamal Murray plays 34. Jokic only plays 32 or 33, because the Nuggets do their best to try to get Jonas Valanciunas out there for as much as time as possible. They try to play 10 guys. It's the 10 players that I have talked about that I talked about yesterday. And it's going to be more of a hockey substitution kind of thing where all of the Nuggets main starters play about 30 to 34 minutes, depending on how they do. Maybe it'll be a little bit less than that, but we'll see what happens. What really should be emphasized here is that there's no staggering. All of the Nuggets guys, all the starters kind of basically stay with each other. And that's how certainly the Nuggets have run things in the past. We'll see whether that changes in this upcoming year. But when you're trying to work in a whole bunch of new players into the mix, you want to keep them together for the most part, except for Cam Johnson, who he has to work with the starters. He is a starter. He's going to be one of Denver's closers for this upcoming season. It is very important for him to develop chemistry as soon as possible. So very curious to see how they handle it. But this is what I would expect, something close to this, nothing crazy. But this is more of a season opener kind of option, and the strengths and weaknesses that you're going to see from something like this. The starters are going to look great. Like, that's never going to be the question. You've got basically, if my math is correct, about 26 total minutes, 27 total minutes. Maybe my math is incorrect. 28 total minutes, I think, of starters playing together. And when you get 28 out of your 48 minutes with the starting lineup, obviously those minutes are going to look pretty good. And if Denver uses this lineup for the first 5 or so games of the season at the amount of proportion, you're probably going to win games just based off of the strength of that group. The bench group doesn't have to do that much in order to hold water. I don't really expect Denver starters to look that bad at the beginning of the season. Cam Johnson should be mostly a seamless fit, We'll see what ultimately it looks like, but that would be my expectation, is that Denver, for the first 3 to 5 to 7 games of the season, it's really going to look like this. And then you get into option 2, which is, okay, well, we saw what that looks like. What happens if you play bigger? Notice that now, instead of Julian Strawther out there, you have Peyton Watson at the 3, Deron Holmes at the 4, and Jonas Valanciunas at the 5, including Jonas Valanciunas and Nikola Jokic playing together. I've got them playing 4 overlapped minutes in this particular lineup. I had somebody on the most recent show ask, hey, how much do you think that Jokic and Valanciunas play together? Obviously, on the most recent episode, I answered that question a lot. So I'm kind of confused as to why that came across the screen. But what I have for this is effectively, all right, I think that Jokic will still play about his 32 to 34 minutes, but you're going to try to kind of keep the burden off of him. And one of the ways to do that is to have Jonas out there. And you play Jonas next to him. It's instead of Deron Holmes next to him, although you could go with Deron Holmes instead. But this way, Denver gets Deron Holmes 10 minutes a game. They get Jonas Valanciunas 18 minutes as opposed to that 14 to 15-minute range, because if you don't have any overlap, there's only so many minutes that a center can play. And yes, while there will be times that the Nuggets blow a team out, that should be the goal, obviously. There should be times where Jokic only plays about 28 to 29 minutes because he doesn't have to come back in the third quarter, or in the fourth quarter, excuse me. But you can't count on that the entire time. So the baseline rotation should try to feature him having less than 36 to 37 minutes a night. One of the best ways to do that is to get him out at the 2-minute mark after 10 total minutes in the first quarter and the third quarter, as opposed to the full 12 minutes that he has been playing. And then that way, Jonas Valanciunas can anchor the end of those lineups, start the quarter with Jamal Murray out there. I have Jamal Murray staggering in this particular section, as I mentioned on the last episode. I think that one of Jamal Murray or Cam Johnson is going to have to stagger on a more consistent basis. In this one, it is Murray. But this way, hey, Julian Strawther's out of the rotation. Tim Hardaway is in, but he doesn't play that much time either. He plays 12 minutes in this particular rotation. Peyton Watson plays 20, including the majority at small forward. Deron Holmes plays some power forward minutes. Cam Johnson is playing only small forward. There's no power forward with him. And Denver just plays pretty big for the vast majority of these lineups. There will be occasional times where they go a little bit smaller, but not that much. Really, this is a lineup and this is a rotation where you're going to play against a bigger physical team and you're going to try to match up with them in size. Option 3, let's go the other direction. Let's play smaller. Hey, you remember Jalen Pickett? Jalen Pickett had a pretty good point guard year last year for Denver. It's not always going to be the case where he's out there with with Bruce Brown. Like the most likely scenario where Jalen Pickett plays is when one of Jamal Murray or Bruce Brown misses time. And that will be a good opportunity for Jalen Pickett to step up. But hypothetically, let's say Julian Strawther is injured, but the Nuggets still want to go with 10 guys. Well, this is one way that they could do it. You play Pickett, Brown, and Tim Hardaway Jr. off the bench. You move Peyton Watson to permanently power forward. You take Deron Holmes out of the equation, and you stagger Cam Johnson. This is an opportunity if you play smaller. Let's say that Jamal Murray and Bruce Brown are both healthy. This is an opportunity to play each of those guys fewer minutes. And I think that Denver should be working stuff like this into the equation even before Murray gets into the red from an energy standpoint, into the yellow from an energy standpoint. You should just be trying to find more creative ways to lower guys' minutes, to reduce the amount of burden that they have to carry. One of the ways is so Jamal Murray doesn't have to stagger with the second unit. You put Jalen Pickett out there instead. You put Bruce Brown out there with him. Then you stagger Cam Johnson. And Cam Johnson, in this case, is not your primary ball handler, but Jalen Pickett's your primary ball handler, but his main job is to set up Cam Johnson, is to set up Jonas Valanciunas. And he can do that. He absolutely can. And then you've got Bruce Brown and Peyton Watson out there for defense. So there is a lot of good ways that Denver can go about this. And I do think that for Denver, they have to find creative ways to reduce the burden for both Jokic and Murray during the season, because you need both of them. heading into the playoffs. You don't need Murray to play at a full all-star level in the playoffs in order to win a championship. But if it's a possibility, you'd like to see it. So don't tire him out. Like, people forget, it wasn't just Nikola Jokic who played a career high in minutes this last year. Jamal Murray did too. And he probably got tired out by the end of it as well. So that is one option. There's another kind of let's go smaller option. Option 4 is where you really start to get into those playoff lineups. This is the let's cut it down to 9 option. And the 9 players that I have in the rotation are the 5 starters: Murray, Brown, Johnson, Gordon, Jokic. But then Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Peyton Watson, and Jonas Valanciunas. Now, you could substitute Julian Strawther in for Tim Hardaway Jr., and that is pretty simple. You could, in theory, substitute in Deron Holmes for Peyton Watson, although you get a little bit less kind of small forward utility. You would probably have to have Christian Brown play some small forward in a lot of these lineups. He can do that, of course. Like, if you told me that the Nuggets had to play Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown, Christian Brown a little bit more consistently, that's fine. Jamal Murray, Tim Hardaway Jr., Christian Brown, that's fine. There's no problem with that. But it means that Deron Holmes has a lot of burden on his shoulders. But that's not what this lineup is. This lineup features Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Peyton Watson, Jonas Valanciunas. But instead of Bruce Brown running the backup point, I have both Jamal Murray and Cam Johnson staggering with this group. This is Denver's let's get serious group, where the bench has been an issue. The bench is a lineup where Denver really needs that utility going forward. And this is an opportunity for both Bruce Brown and Tim Hardaway Jr. to find opportunities to score, play next to Jokic, do some things where they are really trying to take the burden off of Denver Stars. And you get a little bit more extended minutes this way. Like, let's just go from option 1 to option 4. In option 1, here are the minute totals for each of the 5 guys: 20, 14, 15, 14, 15. In option 4, which is when you cut it down to 9, it's 20, 20, 22, and 16. And so you get a little bit more time with the starters as well. Like, they play 34 minutes, 30 minutes, 32, 32, 34, but it's not so much more that Denver can't handle it. Really, what this does is it removes the 10th man from the equation. It gives the other 4 bench guys a little bit more runway in some of their lineups, and it allows Denver to be a little bit more solid rather than relying on too many bench guys. You can play 2 starters for the most part at all times. In this particular lineup, I have 3 total minutes in the first half, 3 total minutes in the second half, where only 1 starter is on the floor. And that would be the 10th minute of the first quarter and the 4th and 5th minutes of the second quarter, and then the accompanying third quarter and fourth quarter minutes. So it's another reasonable one. I think that this is where Denver really starts to get to, if they're like, okay, we got to start winning games. This is where you get into a rhythm. You don't try so hard to win the game that you're actually hurting yourself. But this is where you kind of cut down on the fringes of the rotation and say, it is time to really start to lock in. And then option 5 is we have to win. Like, it is just a requirement. This is hey, you've lost 2 games in a row. You've lost 4 out of your last 7. Everybody's healthy. You've got a good opponent. You really need to lock in and get this game. This is the option where you really just lock in and try to win. And this is kind of closer to a playoff lineup, I would say. This might be Denver's round 1, round 2, game 1, game 2, game 3 expectation. You've got Jamal Murray at 36 minutes, Christian Brown at 34, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic all at 36, Bruce Brown at 20, Tim Hardaway at 14, Peyton Watson at 16, and Jonas Valanciunas at 12. I don't think that Denver's going to be able to play a lot of Jokic, Valanciunas lineups, like where those guys are playing together, in most situations where they have to win. There are too many teams where there's too much mobility, too much problem for Denver to have to navigate in order to like make it work on a consistent basis, in order to bolster those guys defensively. So I think that Denver should mostly be focused on maximizing the groups that they can. You play 2 or 3 starters at all times, and then you try to get back to your 5-starter lineups when you can. Your all-starter lineups is really what I mean. But yeah, there is no moment in this particular rotation where fewer than 2 starters are out on the floor at all times. And that to me really emphasizes that Denver can go to this. They shouldn't have to go to this, though. This should be a rotation that Denver plays in 5 games out of the 82. It is not one where they go to on a consistent basis, but if they're trying to make a point, if they're trying to like clinch home court advantage, if they are trying to clinch a tiebreaker with a divisional opponent, for example, like OKC, like Minnesota, then this is the one that you go to. And it doesn't include Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, Deron Holmes, Hunter Tyson, or Zeke Naji. So all of this to say, Denver's in a situation where the optionality that they have is really important. They have 10 players. They have really 11 players that you feel like deserve to play. Actually, it is 10 because the 11th is Deron Holmes. And while I'm very excited to see what he can do in an NBA rotation, like my brother, for example, he was thinking, yeah, Deron Holmes should play like 18 to 20 minutes per game. I think that's too much. That's too heavy of a burden to place on a young guy immediately in a situation where A, he is like coming off of not playing at all due to injury, due to an Achilles tear. And B, like the team is trying to win. They need guys that they can trust. And it's just a ton of pressure to place on a young guy. And the entire team is basically going to go, hey, we're looking to win. Can we trust you? And if they can, and if Deron Holmes can earn that, then great. That is a great thing for Denver, especially in the regular season. We'll see what happens with him, with Jalen Pickett, even with Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson to a certain extent. Like, there's a world where Denver just goes with Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Jonas Valanciunas as their primary bench guys. There's a lot of pressure on the young guys to step up and deserve to have those opportunities this time around. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to discuss the OKC Thunder and how Denver is chasing them and what they can do as their best options against the best team in the NBA. We'll talk about it next here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, back at it, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, folks. Would really, really appreciate it. Really quick, per FanDuel, I'm exhausting all of the odds, if you can tell, because the odds have not really, or the certain amount of things from game to game have not really changed, given that we are still a month away from things. They haven't really put a whole bunch of extra games on the board except for the opening day games and the Christmas Day games. Eventually, those will get up there, and I'll be able to make this a little bit more dynamic. There will be some player props that I can really start to get into, things like that. According to FanDuel, OKC is minus 400 to win the Northwest Division. Denver is plus 500. Minnesota plus 1,300. Portland plus 25,000. They are not expected to be a factor there. And really what this emphasizes is that during the regular season, OKC is king. OKC has the expectation, especially after putting up a massive season last year. They won like 68 games. They had a historic net rating that they were able to put together. And Denver did not. Denver won 50 games. That's an 18-game difference. I think that Denver got better. I think that there's an argument that OKC is going to relax a little bit. But is it actually an argument to say that those teams could have around the same record? Probably not. Like, it would be, to me, it would be very surprising if OKC did not win the Northwest Division again. They just have too many options. They brought back every single player in their rotation, effectively in their roster, and they're adding a guy like Nikola Topic, who's a young Serbian rookie who was injured the entire last regular season and should give them at least a little bit of boost in creation for when they decide that they want to rest certain players. And so we'll see what happens, but I still think that OKC is the king in the Western Conference and certainly in the Northwest Division. But that doesn't mean that Denver can't start comparing themselves to them. Especially Denver went to 7 games with OKC. Do I think that that series was as close as that record indicates? Probably not. But it still happened, and Denver got better, and OKC, I think, stayed the same for the most part. So we'll see what happens, but I do think that we can now start talking about, and especially with the rotations, we can now start talking about this in the prism of how does Denver match up with OKC? What does it actually look like? We've done this a little bit before, but now I really, like, as we are navigating the playoffs and navigating, like, not the playoffs, like when you start to really hone in on these matchups, Denver, of course, played OKC. They played them pretty closely. There were some things that Denver did that OKC wasn't really ready for. OKC also performed pretty poorly from a shooting efficiency standpoint on like Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. And for example, those guys underperformed in a situation where we would expect them to normalize in a series going forward. So you look at that and you think, all right, what does Denver actually look like? What would they do? Well, let's go back to this option 5. Let's think about this from a perspective of the OKC Thunder. You've got Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic in your starting group. That's the one that you would expect to go with. Obviously, Denver went with that same starting lineup with MPJ in it for the vast majority of the OKC series. If I go and look at the stats that Denver put up and the like minutes stats that Denver put up in that particular series, Michael Porter played 29.5 minutes. Russell Westbrook played 22.7. Peyton Watson played 14.8. Julian Strawther played 11.9. So that was your 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th man in that particular stretch. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray averaged 40. Christian Brown averaged 38. Aaron Gordon averaged 35.7. Part of that was due to injury. You would expect all of those guys to be in that 36 to 40 minute per game threshold. And then Cam Johnson, if he's viable in this particular series, you would expect him to be at that 36-minute threshold as well. So I think that we have to win this game rotation option would make a lot of sense for a game 1, 2, or 3 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is your Western Conference Finals kind of rotation. Bruce Brown's going to play. Tim Hardaway's going to play. Peyton Watson's going to play. Jonas Valanciunas is the interesting one to me. And this is where I kind of get into playoff matchups and what it actually looks like. OKC last year, they played 3 centers, right? They started, Chet's not really a true center. He's just a big. He's a versatile big. But against most of the other teams in the NBA, he plays center very consistently. Against Denver, he played a lot of power forward. He played next to Isaiah Hartenstein. And then big Jalen Williams, Arkansas Jalen Williams, played in that series the most of any of the series against Jokic and the Nuggets. And it gave them the size that they needed to match up with Denver, to be physical, to match up with Denver's size, because that was Denver's advantage heading into the matchup. And it won Denver some games very clearly. Jonas Valanciunas adds to that. He does. But is he a good enough scorer, rebounder, and more seriously, defender in space to keep up with the Oklahoma City Thunder if they decide they want to go 5 out? So my big question for this is, can Jonas Valanciunas guard? No, not against the OKC Thunder, not to the degree that he would have to in that particular series. He is going to be put on an island by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, by Jalen Williams. If he is guarding big Jalen Williams in some of these lineups, then he will have to probably switch in some of those, but he'll probably recover, and then Denver's going to have to find a way to close out to the 3-point line. There are going to be so many times where OKC is just bombing away from 3. They're taking 40, 45, 50 threes in that case. It's already a problem that Denver had to face in that particular series. On that series overall, the Thunder attempted 263 threes. Let me just do the math on that. 263 divided by 7, 37.8 three-point attempts per game. That is a lot. And OKC didn't even shoot well. They shot 32% from three. But if you play Jonas Valanciunas, they're going to get a lot of easy ones. Just like when kind of Jokic doesn't necessarily get out to the perimeter as often, or the Nuggets have to rotate behind him to make an extra rotation, and then nobody rotates behind that, you're going to get open threes. And so the thing is, like, if OKC shoots well on 38 threes per game, they're going to win 4 out of 7 games. So I think that when Denver gets to this point, you're probably not going to see as much Jonas Valanciunas. It'll probably go from 8 to 10 minutes of Jonas Valanciunas to 4 minutes to 0 minutes. That'll be my expectation heading into a series like this. And that's okay. Because here's the thing, like, Jonas Valanciunas is a regular season addition. He's a guy that can help you get through the first and maybe even second round of the playoffs. He is a guy that should be able to give Denver a good look that they can use beyond Jokic. Like, Denver's stability at their backup center spot these last 3 years, I talked about it on the last show, certainly not awesome. Jonas Valanciunas will stabilize that. But when you get to these elite teams, especially these perimeter-oriented teams, what Jonas can do on the interior does not outweigh the issues that he will face when having to guard, run back in transition, chase out to the three-point line, things like that. And like, there's so many times that, like, think about how often OKC collapsed on Jokic in the middle of the paint. That was an issue. That was something that they had to really figure out and navigate. And it'll get 10 times worse with Jonas, who won't be able to handle that as well as Jokic did. Like, he just won't. Nobody can. Jokic handled it about as well as anybody possibly could. And I think that Jonas will probably get the ball stripped. He'll probably get blocked. He'll probably turn it over. He will miss some shots. Like, certainly do better than somebody like DeAndre Jordan or Zeke Naji in that situation, but not good enough to justify the problems that would happen on the other end too. So I think that Denver and their top 8, it will go to Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Peyton Watson. And it got me thinking. I went back and I looked at the Game 7 matchups that happened between Denver and OKC, and the players that Denver played versus the players that OKC played. Peyton Watson was one of the guys. They played Russell Westbrook. They played Julian Strawther, I believe. And then the bench for OKC was Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, and Aaron Wiggins. They played 3 small guys as well. So if Denver has to go with Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway, Peyton Watson, that is not the worst thing in the world. Like, Peyton Watson should be somebody, especially in his 4th season, that can help match up with some of these, like, smaller lineups. That would at least be the hope. But Denver's going to have to really navigate that. And I'm curious to see whether, like, that's one option. Could Deron Holmes play his way into a backup center situation where he's able to switch and guard and move and rebound and do all the things in a small ball lineup? Or maybe it's like he's playing the Jeff Green lineup, or the Jeff Green minutes next to Aaron Gordon and what he was doing in 2023. A healthy Aaron Gordon might be able to handle that situation a little bit better, especially if he's just matching up with Chet Holmgren. If he's matching up with Isaiah Hartenstein, it's a little bit different. You might need Deron Holmes in a situation like that. But we'll see. We'll see what it ultimately looks like. This will be a chess match for sure. But I kind of have it as this being the top 8 for both of those teams. You've got Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Peyton Watson. Those will be the guys that Denver uses. This is your win-or-go-home rotation. And then for OKC, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso. He played more than Isaiah Hartenstein did in that game. Cason Wallace, and Aaron Wiggins. Like, that's That is a significant battle. And if everybody's healthy in that situation, I think Denver's better. Like, I know that that's going to rub some people the wrong way. I just think Denver's top 8 is better than OKC's top 8. That might not bear out in a game 7 if OKC's at home, if Denver's gassed, if they're like by the end of it, they're just running on fumes and OKC's feeling good. If you give those two teams a neutral court and you give them maximum energy, which you can't really do, but like if you had an opportunity to do so, I think Denver's better. I think they are. I think they're gamers. I think, like, especially the Cam Johnson edition, the Bruce Brown edition, the Tim Hardaway Jr. edition, those will be helpful. Tim Hardaway's not going to be able to, like, he's going to be taken advantage of defensively for sure. I'm not going to sit here and say that he isn't, but he also could change the game with 4 3-pointers. And if you're the OKC Thunder, you're trying to swarm, you're trying to do everything you can to stay with other guys. Like, Tim Hardaway has been doing this forever. And if you leave him open the way that they're leaving, like if they leave Christian Brown open the same way, Russell Westbrook open the same way, that's tough. If you leave them Tim Hardaway Jr. open that way, he can make you pay. So I'm curious. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this is one of those matchups that we need to see. I really want to see what it looks like when these teams are healthy. And I'm really, really looking forward to what Denver can put together. And if they can even get to that point, because the NBA world would be very happy to see those 8-man rotations going at it. And I think that it's deserved. I think that those are the 2 best teams in the Western Conference. I think that OKC is better in the regular season. But when you get down to it, I do think that Denver has enough with that particular group. They need belief. They need to be locked in defensively. That's a very, very difficult offense for the OKC Thunder to stop. I think it got better this offseason. And we'll see whether that plays out the same way. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports and FanDuel. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys on Saturday.